They also have to point out that the reason there is an Australian Institute of Marine Science was that a certain John Buist cornered, or I think the better word would be ambushed, John Gorton on the beach at Dunk Island one day when Perry told him he was over there. And as a consequence, he sat down beside Gorton, introduced himself, and said, you know what we really need for the Barrier Reef is an institute that will carry out long-term studies. So that's how it happened. Not widely known by anyone, perhaps other than those who knew John. My own involvement came in an unexpected way, in that when the application to mine Ellison Reef for limestone was first lodged in the local press here, John scurried to Brisbane and he wanted to see the Great Barrier Reef Committee's leaders. The Great Barrier Reef Committee, of course, was the institution that worked with the British Museum in 1928 and carried out the first major study of a portion of the Barrier Reef, mainly around the Low Isles area, but they did some work in the Whitsundays as well. But that was really the first big scientific effort on the reef. And John thought, well, those are the people, I mean, if the reef is threatened, I should go to the people who put the reef on the map. And I won't use John's words because it would be slightly impolite, but believe me, John was very depressed that every member of this group from the Reef Committee that he spoke to, all, in his words, hid under their desk when he asked them to come up here and save the reef. They were worried that they might I'm quoting John, he was worried that they might lose their tiny research grants if they offended the government. He then heard, well, there's a bunch of young guys who go out in Moreton Bay every week and they do reef surveys and they really know their fish, and why don't you go see them? And he said, well, who are they? I don't know, they're just some young guys that do it, you know? They're from Queensland Uni. So, in fact, he made contact with us, and when he first spoke to me and Ross Robertson and Des Connell, Ross was president, Des was vice president, my own reaction was, oh, how are we going to cope with the Barrier Reef when we have Moreton Bay being destroyed around us? We have to appreciate this was the era of the Jelka Peterson government where everything was being bulldozed in the natural environment in Queensland. It was just appalling. And Moreton Bay was just being cleared. Mangroves were being cleared all over the place for canal estate housing developments. So when John suggested we come up and start on the Barrier Reef, my own reaction was, how can we do it? You know, there's only a little of us, a small group of us, we don't have much money. How are we even going to get there? And John said, don't worry, I'll organise that. John organised the airfares, free airfares from the air, I forget which airline. And it was Ansett, was it? I couldn't remember. And then he organised an Avis car for free. So, you know, we got off the plane, got into the Avis car, drove up here, and we were feeling pretty good. We thought, oh, you know, we're going to make a difference here. So we got down here and met John and everything, and Perry delivered us out to the reef. And I do have to nominate two forgotten heroes in this story. There were two cane farmers of Italian descent. They were both about this high, so they'd built a boat that fit them. They'd each built a wooden boat. They were definitely unsafe at any speed, but you had to admit they were great guys and they were willing to put up with us for a week and cook food for us and try and keep us alive. So they were charming men who could not have been more generous. The only problem we had was that, you know, we were this high and the boat entrance to the cabin was this high. So after a few days, we had these very, very pronounced bruises from going in and out of the cabin. But they did look after us. I was quite concerned that as the week progressed, it started off reasonable weather, but it really deteriorated and the water got dirtier and dirtier. And I was really concerned at night because we had to jump between the two boats for some of us to sleep in the other boat. And I was really worried that someone was going to lose their footing and go over the side and wind up in Fiji. So, you know, that didn't happen, fortunately. The Ellison Reef survey was a success in proving that this was a normal reef. So what we were able to find was, you know, we came up with pretty big species lists for fish and corals. We've done that in any of the reefs because this is typical of what's on the, you know, in a shelf barrier reef out there. And to say that it was different or dead was just outrageous. But the great thing is that we had a mining warden who wasn't afraid of offending the Queensland government when so many of the Barrier Reef Committee were, for example. He gave he gave us a good hearing, asked lots of good questions, and his decision was the appropriate one. However, it's interesting to note that that didn't resolve the issue. We had to campaign for about 7 months more before we got a final decision from the Queensland government because they didn't want to make it. They definitely did not want to make it, but they were forced to do that by public opinion. And then not long after that, we had on December 24th, 1968, we had, I always make a point in this period when things were being destroyed all around us to carefully look at the government notices, particularly just in front of holidays, which is a great time to sneak something through. And would you believe, on December 24th, they put a little ad in a little notice in the Brisbane Courier Mail, which said, "Oh, we're giving out oil prospecting authorities for the entire Great Barrier Reef region." Would anyone be upset? No, of course not. Anyway, that started the Barrier Reef campaign in earnest. It really became not just a national issue, but an international issue. But you have to remember, it all started here, and it was all due to John Bust. Thank you.